there, thanks for being here. My name is Mile Marker, also known as Madeline. This podcast aims to discover what it means to live authentically. I work to uncover tools to help me be most present in my life. Each episode, we will discuss themes like how to listen to your body, understanding ways to be true to yourself, and learning what deep fulfillment looks like. The episodes will also relate to ideas inspired by my 2024 hike across the state of Arizona. Let's do this. Welcome to episode 5 of Musings with Mile Marker. Now that we are 5 episodes in, it seems like as good a time as any to talk more about the actual hiking. What are the conditions? Just to give you a better understanding of what the day-to-day is on the trail. I want to talk more about day 4 and then we can explain how day 5 went. So on the trail for day 4, I was clip-clopping along 4 or so miles in. And on day 4, we only hiked 6 miles total, which again, anything less than 10 would have been considered a short day. And after hiking 6 miles, we made it to Casablanca Trailhead, which is a typical trailhead. I think there was a small parking lot or a pullout off of the main road, and it connects you to the trail from a road. And the trail, where it passes through the road, is about halfway between 2 towns. This road is Arizona State Route 82. I'm just going to call it Highway 82. And where the Arizona Trail intersects Highway 82 is basically halfway between 2 towns, Patagonia and Sonoita. During my trip planning, I had prepared to do a resupply in Patagonia. So where we were at the trailhead, we knew we needed to either walk down Highway 82 or get a ride. And you can get a ride multiple ways. You can hitchhike. You can basically start walking down Highway 82 and hope someone pulls over and lets you get in the back of their truck or car. But in this case, since we were on Highway 82 and we had cell service, we had plans to stay at this hostel campground that night. And so we called them and said, "Hi, we're at Casablanca Trailhead. Can you pick us up?" And they said, "Sure, we're on our way." So the hostel folks picked us up, and it's about a 5-mile drive. They picked us up, drove us to the hostel. We unpacked, set up our tent on their little campgrounds, and then there's a sink and showers and laundry on site. So when we were in Patagonia, we were able to do regular chores. I had also shipped my first food resupply box to Patagonia. If you think, I'm going to hike 800 miles, obviously you're not carrying 800 miles worth of food the entire time. You're breaking up the hike into sub-hikes, mini hikes. And from day 0 to day 4 was our first food carry. And then I shipped a box of breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks to this hostel in Patagonia. And it had arrived there. So I already knew all of my food, calories, anything I was going to need from Patagonia to my next section, which our next resupply was in Colossal Cave. I had already prepared that. And the reason why I liked shipping the food and pre-planning the food ahead of time is that it meant that that was one less task I needed to do in town. In Patagonia, I could focus on cleaning my clothes, washing my cookware, resting, instead of having to go grocery shopping and pack the food and think about that element as much. I'm recording all of my mileage on this app called Strava, and I am using a fitness watch called the Coros Apex watch, and I start my activity. I start it as a run, even though technically it's a hike. I'm listing it as a run, and it records my mileage. And I like this because it records my pace and the distance and the elevation gain and the time I began. But then I could tell when I went into town from Patagonia at 10:13 a.m., I
recorded a Strava activity, which was bike riding. So from this little hostel, the hostel is called Terrasol, they have these loaner bikes. So I took a loaner bike and I rode into town so that we could eat lunch and go to this little organic grocery store to see if we did want any fun extra snacks, because more snacks is always the answer. And there was a little town square that had a gazebo, so we wanted to check out the town of Patagonia. And now it's nice for me to reflect and look back and see, oh, there's my Strava activity from my little bike ride errands around the town of Patagonia. When I think back about my time spent in Patagonia, it was one of my favorite resupply towns. It was very charming. The shops were cute. But spending time there did not feel like a vacation. If I go to a cute town during a vacation, I feel like I can really experience the place and soak it up and feel immersed in my surroundings. But even on this rest day during the hike, I felt like I was always in go mode, always on a mission. I had objectives that needed to be met. Because we did not take extended rest days, even the rest time was kind of regimented or partitioned out. So you take the bikes, you go into town, you eat, but there's always something to do or prepare or think about how it's going to orient you for the next set of miles you're going to do. And perhaps doing a hike of a shorter distance, or if we had given ourselves more time, I would have felt like I could really rest and really recover and really absorb the essence of Patagonia for what it was. But I was task-minded while I was there and still able to really appreciate being in a town and having running water at my fingertips and hand soap with a towel. You know, it's really the small things that when you're living out of a backpack and in a tent, it's small things like being able to wash your hands and face with soap and dry them with a towel that you really appreciate. But I do want to spend more of this episode talking about the actual hiking. So let's get into the day 5 audio and we can recap after that. We made some new friends today. Today is Thursday the 14th. It is day 5. Nick and I went on our bicycles into Patagonia and had a really good breakfast at the Higher Ground restaurant, or whatever that Grounds restaurant is called. And then we got a burrito to go. Took the 8 o'clock shuttle with Justin and Morgan from Terrasol, and hiked a solid 10 miles at a really fast clip, like the fastest 10-mile section I've had over all these days. Made it to a nice water area, rested for a little, met a girl named Chandler. She rested with us there too. Had the burrito, took a little bath. It was great. Good rest. But then the 9 miles after that were a little slow for me. Had to really focus on 5 miles from there to the next water stop. And then the last 3, were hard. My body feels good, actually. I'm just tired. I actually think eating a lot in the breakfast and then eating a lot at lunch, but not a little bit all the time, was a little harder for me to adjust to, but who knows. We made it to our campsite. We are here with Justin and Morgan and a guy named Don Roberto. We just chatted with him. He's from Detroit. He is not looking forward to the rain tomorrow. You know, TBD if it rains tomorrow. We are north of Patagonia, south of Colossal Cave, around the Vale area. We'll see if it rains. The terrain today was a little different. They were building the trail out with 2 men and 1 woman and a dog, with some equipment to like craft the trail. I felt like it was really mountain biker geared. And we actually did see 4 or 5 mountain bikers on the ride, and then they were chilling by the water when we were resting there.
the trail apparently used to go to the west, but now they're making this new one, which feels very mountain biker friendly. So who knows what the plan will be. It was very exposed, really smooth, helpful for me to get easier miles, but potentially not as scenic as if it were in the forest. So um, the clouds were much puffier. I guess that makes sense because we're potentially expecting weather, but it had been really loose clouds, like strippy clouds, and today they were fluffier. So they provide a little bit of shade cover, and it was a little breezy, so we didn't overheat. I did not use the umbrella today. I used the umbrella on day 2 and 3, but not 5. And obviously not 4 because we didn't do a lot of miles. What was that, Nick? Oh yeah, and it was really too windy. It wasn't that sunny, and it was too windy. My lips feel kind of chapped though, so I'm gonna keep hydrating them. The campsite we're at is really excellent, and there's a really nice creek right next to us, so we can hear it flowing. I washed my hands and face. Yeah, I'm happy to be resting. It's only like 6:45, but I'm gonna go to sleep soon. We're gonna do approximately 16 miles tomorrow, and hopefully we don't get too wet.
What you just heard was an audio clip from my day 5 of hiking on the Arizona Trail. Again, I want to reiterate that we took this shuttle with Morgan and Justin at 8. So at Terrasol, all these other campers are hanging out, and in the morning they say, okay, who wants to go back to Casablanca Trailhead? We're rounding up the crew. So that's when all of our gear was packed up. We'd eaten breakfast, gotten our extra second meal. And because I have this data from Strava, we went into town on our bikes at 6:53 a.m. so that we could eat breakfast and get a doggy bag, because having fresh, real food on the trail is always better than a Cliff Bar or ramen equivalent. So we drove back to Casablanca Trailhead and then continued on. And when I had mentioned that I felt really fast in the beginning and then slow in the afternoon, how fast and slow are we really talking? By the end of the 5th day, I hiked a total of 71.1 miles on the Arizona Trail. On day 5 specifically, the total mileage was 19.12 miles. My hiking activity began at 8:15 a.m. and the total moving time was 7 hours 11 minutes. At 8:15 a.m. when I turned my watch on, the temperature was 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity was 60%, which even now, thinking about being in Arizona, 60% humidity seems crazy high. But we were at elevation in this Mount Wrightson wilderness area. My first 10 miles were at least 22-minute miles or faster. And being quote unquote fast or slow doesn't matter when you're hiking. Doesn't really mean anything. My general rule of thumb for the pace that I wanted to maintain over the course of the day would have been, with breaks and hiking included, a 25-minute mile per hour. So while you're walking, that's, let's say, a 20-minute mile, and then you break and stop, and so you're getting obviously 0 minutes per mile at a pace. So in that regard, being faster than 22 minutes per mile was a pretty good clip. Then the second 9 miles was slower, which again is fine. I always kind of have this idea in the back of my mind. We got to keep hiking. We got to make it 19 miles. We got to get to our campsite. Go, 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 go is the mindset. But you get to your campsite when you get to your campsite. And you have everything you need because you just left your resupply. So I could have stopped and smelled the roses a little bit more, but alas. My pace for the second half of the day was still faster than 25 minutes per mile, but we're looking at 24:35, 24:36, 24:29. So certainly slower than the previous half of the day, which was 21:44, 22:52, etc. And even in the grand scheme of things, this is only a couple of minutes per mile. Physically and mentally, it felt harder. It felt slower. So sometimes, even when the reality is not as dramatic as what it feels like in your mind, if it feels excruciatingly slow in your mind, it's hard to convince yourself otherwise. And in my case, I had no way of evaluating this or reviewing these mile splits in the moment. I'm just walking. It's only now that I can upload these activities from my watch to the cloud and then look at it on a computer or on my cell phone to see, what was my perception and what was the reality of the actual pace that I was hiking out there. Now let's talk a little bit about elevation gain, because again, I think that the terrain of Phoenix is a lot of what people think of when they think of the climate and ecology of Arizona, but being in the Mount Wrightson wilderness was definitely distinct from what Phoenix is like. Leaving Patagonia, we were leaving at an elevation of 4,200 feet, and then we climbed and descended a little bit, but mostly climbed throughout the course of the day, and finished the miles and camped at 5,400 feet. An overall net gain, but with the course of the ups and downs of the 19 miles, the elevation gain overall was 3,156 feet. And that was on the higher side. Climbing also automatically slows you down. Anytime you're on a grade that's steeper than flat, it's hard work. It's going to slow you down a little bit. I knew that the terrain in the beginning was going to be more intense than the terrain in the second half of the trail. The phrase for this region of Arizona is called the Sky Islands. Basically, these desert conditions have mountains, so as you gain elevation, you're also gaining moisture and precipitation, etc. So we're in these desert conditions, but while you're at 5,000 feet or so, you still have more creeks and trees, etc. And this Sky Island region is, as far as I could tell, kind of south and southeast of Tucson. And it was beautiful. I love the desert, and especially the desert that has wet areas, because the smells are so vivid, and we had a lot of cactus that were blooming, and because there was a lot of precipitation during this time we were here seasonally, there were wildflowers. There was just a lot to appreciate. So on day 5, while it was a little bit exposed and a little bit windy, again, conditions started at 46 degrees. So even by the end of the day, it was not hot at this time. I'm glad that day 5 is the day that Morgan and Don Roberto also got introduced. I don't know why I decided to call Robert Don Roberto, but once you give someone a nickname, you can never imagine them with any other name. I imagine his name is Robert, and he would introduce himself in the world as Robert. But other than Don Roberto, I also called him Oberto, because I think that he was eating Oberto brand beef jerky, or someone. I came across Oberto brand beef jerky sometime on this trail, and so Don Roberto became Oberto in my mind the entire rest of this trip. And we didn't see him that frequently. We saw him a handful of times on and off. Because someday, if we went 19 miles, but then we did a maybe shorter day the next day, but he went a long time, vice versa, you're kind of leapfrogging with hikers. And you come across them, and then you lose touch, and then you come across them again. And that was really fun. That was a really enjoyable element of this. And Morgan became our best friend of the entire trip. We actually started the hike and ended the hike on the same exact day, but there were many, many days that we had completely different schedules. So the world works in mysterious ways, and I'm really glad that we got to share miles with her, because she was a hiking guide from Wisconsin originally, but lived outside of Glacier National Park in Montana. She was doing this hike by herself on her own, like a solo through hike, and I was impressed because I would definitely not have had the chutzpah to do this hike by myself. Granted, I've done 0 hikes or camping at all by myself, even to this day. And there's something really valuable about being truly self-reliant, and Morgan did a great job of that. I appreciated the inspiration that she gave me throughout the entire trip. I think the other beautiful thing about this hike is I planned for, we have to do X amount of miles to get to Patagonia. Then we're going to do another X amount of miles to get to Colossal Cave. So I will make another box for however many miles worth of food. But once you're out there, you got to live life on your toes. What's that phrase? You got to think on your feet a little bit more, pun intended, because maybe there's a big storm and you have to wait it out for an extra day, or there are countless unforeseeable things that can change your itinerary and make you think on the fly. So while I had tentatively planned how many miles I wanted to achieve each day, there was no way of knowing if that was going to become reality. And in particular, the rest days. While I was planning the logistics, I assumed I was going to take more full 0 days, full days of no hiking and exclusively staying in a town. But the 0 days ended up being quote unquote Nero days, and a Nero day is nearly 0. But nearly 0 is still not 0 miles. 0 miles is not the same as 5. And I am glad that I planned to the amount that I did. But then once you're out there, you just let it happen. And you take every minute as it comes to you. And I think that approaching life that way is good. Be prepared. Have a plan. Think about the end goal. Think about what you want to accomplish. But maybe it's going to be windy, and you're going to have to accept the breeze as it's blowing past you. And maybe it's going to dump rain or dump hail or snow all over. You just deal with it. And we're very resilient. Humans are very resilient. Hikers are very resilient. And accepting things as they're happening to you and rolling with the punches is important all the time. And even if I decided, I really want to sleep in today, I'm feeling so tired. Okay, well, I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of sleeping in, and I'm going to have to hike longer in the day. And then, everything has a repercussion, but repercussions aren't bad. I don't want to use the phrase repercussion or ramifications, because you wake up and you hike, and whatever happens, happens. And you don't want to think about things being negative. You just want to experience them as they are. And I was out here experiencing the terrain, experiencing the exposure, experiencing this potentially new and different trail. And maybe someone liked the old trail better. Guess what? I'm on this new trail. I'm experiencing this new trail. This is what I'm getting today. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. And I was still so happy to be in the throes of this hike. So grateful to be sleeping outside and breathing fresh air. And even though I was eating Cliff Bars and ramen, I loved it. Those Pro Bar granola bars, they were decent. I love ramen. The ramen was amazing every time. I still like ramen. So everything has a way of being appreciated while you're doing it. And the first few miles of day 5 were fast. The second few miles of day 5 were slow. And guess what? I got through the day, and everything is great. And even if I got through the day and everything really, really was awful, day 6 is still another day. So I'm not entirely sure what my moral of the day 5 story is going to be, but I was happy to be camping at the end of the day with some new friends, because you never know who's going to come across your life at any given moment. And I was anticipating the rain, but enjoying the clear skies while I had them. If you liked learning more about thru hiking specifically, or have other Arizona Trail related questions, send me an email at musingswithmilemarker@gmail.com. I love feedback.
That concludes this episode of Musings with Mile Marker. Thanks for listening. The intro and outro music are from a track called Wake Robin, composed and recorded by my late grandfather, Bob Ackery. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Polly Morwood. Production and editing of this podcast were done by me, your host, Mile Marker, aka Madeline Ackery. See you next time.